What's up, everybody? Welcome into this episode of the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. I am your host today. Again, we are without Ronnie Moore. He is traveling to a wedding. So it's just going to be me today with my guest, as you could guess, if you're watching on YouTube, is Easton Fothergill. Easton, what a year. I know you've been hearing that a lot, and obviously winning the bracket and then going through the open season. That's an honor in itself, right? I mean, you talk about that opportunity, but then to seize that opportunity and to do what you did this season, if you could just summarize what that ride's been like so far.
I mean, we'll go all the way back to the college classic bracket, and everything I went through before that, and then to win that tournament. And, I still remember driving to Okeechobee, just thinking about how crazy it was that I'm finally doing the opens, and, I'm able to do it. And then just to have the season I've had from then on was incredible. And like you said, to take advantage of the opportunity that was given to me is, super life-changing. And, I'm just super grateful, honestly.
Obviously, you've told your story so many times, and we even had you on the podcast as soon as that tournament was over with. And when the results came out of that tournament, nobody was surprised to see Easton Fothergill as the winner. You might have been, but I don't think anybody that covered the Strike King Bassmaster College Series was surprised to see that. But obviously, win that and then get to fish the Opens. Driving down to Okeechobee, that's pretty awesome. You're getting to fish the Opens. Not only do you go fish the tournament, you finish 7th. So I know that was a really cool experience for you. You and your partner, Bo Browning, get to travel together and, basically drive from the University of Montevallo, where you're still going to school. I don't know for sure if you guys even actually went to class or got, there was even grades to report on. I'm not sure that's even the reality of it. But you guys get to travel down there together. You finish 7th. Bo finishes 9th, I think, 9th or 10th. I mean, You guys both finish inside the top 10. Just setting the tone early, how much did that mean for you personally, to start the season out on such a high note?
It meant the world to me and Bo both. We're fishing in the same general area, doing things a little bit differently, but we both had a super late check-in on day 2, and we both had really good bags driving in together, and that's a memory that I'll never forget. And yeah, to start the season off that well, it just gave me a bunch of confidence going into the rest of the season, because to start that tournament off, I was right behind Randall Tharp, just, wondering if I even belong here. So, and then that kind of just showed me that, I can hang with these guys and, some confidence going into the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you obviously move on to Lake Ouachita, and 11th place finish there. Narrowly missed the top 10 in that one. Speaking of Bo Browning, I wonder what it was like. Now, looking back on it, have you given him a hard time about almost top 10ing, his home lake? And, that was one of his lesser finishes of the year. And I'm wondering now, if you really drove home the point that you showed him how it was done on his home lake.
It's funny you say that. During practice that week, Bo by heart is a shallow water bank beater type person, and myself being from Minnesota, I'm a big time finesse guy. So all of that practice, it was glaringly obvious how our styles are different. He was catching them on the bank, and I'm telling him all practice, there's a really good, scope type finesse bite, and he was going to do his thing, and I was going to do my thing. I'm not by no means going to ever try to get him off his game. So. And yeah, it's just, it ended up being 1 on the bank. Bo just, it wasn't his week, but it was definitely super, super cool to have a good finish there and keep the season rolling.
Yeah, and I imagine, I was really hoping that you would really give me an answer saying that you really talked a lot of crap to him between then and now. But it's all good now. Of course, both you guys making it to the Elite Series. But obviously you spent 4 years on the College Series.
Yep.
So 4 years on the College Series, obviously that primed you up pretty well to understand what it's like to travel around the country, fish different bodies of water that are unlike each other. I mean, obviously you're from Minnesota. I imagine there's a lot of different variety there, but there can only be so much variety in one state. So you come to college, you have such a good career at Montevallo, traveling the country, getting to fish different bodies of water. What do you think the biggest step was between college and jumping into the Opens? Because I assume there's got to be some things you learned along the way. There's got to be a different mentality when you get into the Open season.
I guess the biggest thing I took away from college was finding your identity as a fisherman. When I first got to college, I was Dardanelle is the perfect example. You know, I'm doing all this research driving to Dardanelle, like, okay, white swim jigs, frogs, okay, this is what I need to do. And my first 2 times that we went to Dardanelle all 4 years of college, and my first 2 years they were just a disaster because I was doing what I'm supposed to do. And then finally, the time before my junior year, I came to the conclusion, like, I'm going to go this whole season, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it my style. And then from then on, as soon as I made that call, things have just been up and up and up. And I've just really zoned in on my identity, is what I call it as a fisherman. You know, I'm the finesse guy, but you know, at the same time, I do my best not to have a weakness. If I feel like I have a weakness, I'm going to be relentless trying to make sure it's not a weakness. But yeah, from then on, I really found my identity. And that being said, with the Opens, the college series really, you know, showed me a lot of adversity and just how to tackle that. And obviously on the Opens, it's that even greater. The caliber of angler is just that much better. But you know, I just understood how to, you know, handle adversity, which was thrown at me at literally every tournament this year. But just having all that time traveling in college, I just knew how to tackle it, and I think that's the biggest reason why I had success this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. And then, you know, obviously 2025, you're going to be fishing the Bassmaster Elite Series. I have to imagine that's been the goal of yours for probably your entire life, that you've been able to process that information. And you know, I'm curious now, like heading into your first season on the Bassmaster Elite Series, you've probably not had enough time to really think about it, but like what are some of the things, you know, you're trying to keep in mind that you learned from the Opens to take into the Elite Series, if that makes sense? You know, fishing an entire tour the way you did in, you know, the Bassmaster Opens.
It's going to be basically the same mindset I had in the Opens. Like I said, you know, driving to Okeechobee, like, do I belong here? That sort of thing. It's going to be the same exact thing at St. John's River, the first event of the year. But, you know, I feel like this was a good kind of warm-up, just kind of blocking all that out and realizing I still have a job to do. And just, you know, it's me against the fish. No one else matters. So that's the mindset that I'll have in the Elite Series, and just do my best to block out all the lights and cameras and everything, and just realize that there's still a job to do. And yeah, that's kind of the mindset.
For sure. And something I gave you a hard time about off camera is, you know, you might be the luckiest human being on earth. And I don't say that because of anything specific other than, you know, winning the college bracket allows you to fish the Opens, entry fees, you know, covered. And you get, you know, obviously the Toyota Tundra to drive across the country. You get you were in a nitro, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're in a nitro boat, you know, all through the season. And it's such a great opportunity. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. You don't really have to talk that up a whole lot to understand that that's such a great opportunity. But then your first year on the Elite Series, there's also going to be no entry fees. So, I mean, it's really early on in this process. When we're shooting this podcast, we're only a day into that news being out there. But what's it been like trying to register that information? Like, you're not going to have to, you know, send in a deposit, you know, before the first tournament.
It's pretty crazy, honestly. Getting that news was a big deal to me because I've been just working my butt off trying to get enough sponsorship money for next year to, you know, to be able to do this thing and actually, you know, be comfortable. And, you know, getting that off my back is definitely a big deal, and it definitely makes things a little bit more calm going into the season for sure.
And, you know, that's something that we've obviously talked about a decent amount, you know, through the coverage of the no entry fees. You know, that's one thing that I think maybe is getting missed, and this is just my personal opinion, is that all that sponsorship money that, you know, might have gone towards, you know, entry fees to start the season, that's money in your pocket now. So, I mean, like, I imagine as a rookie and somebody that just got off the run that you had, that's got to be a huge deal.
Right. No, it definitely is. Like I said, it's just peace of mind going into the season that I still have that money in my pocket. I can put it towards, you know, the gas and the lodging. And, yeah, it definitely gets you off on the right foot for sure. So
we did the numbers. You know, we're looking through your season on the Opens. And if you calculate it up, you averaged a 22nd place finish. Inside of that was 2 wins, and then obviously 2 finishes in the top 15. Your worst finish of the year, I mean, it wasn't great, was it? I mean, it wasn't the best tournament of all time. Yeah. But from then, you rebounded back, and like I said, those 2 wins came, you know, separated by 1 tournament. I'm a fishing guy, so we've talked about various different things. I want to talk about like baits, things that you did throughout this season that really helped you have success, because I imagine it's not just one thing, one bait, one, you know, technique that helped you out. When you kind of break the season up in categories, you know, talk to me about the baits. Let's just say from Okeechobee, Ouachita, and Santee Cooper, like some of the baits that you went through in that tournament, we can kind of break those down as well.
Yeah, so Okeechobee, like I said, I really found my identity, and I'm a finesse guy, and actually that's the bite I got on at Okeechobee. I was fishing shallow cruisers and spawners with a spinning rod. In practice, it was all a Nico rig, just a June bug worm, and then actually day 2 of that tournament, my first fish was an 8 3/4 pounder that spit up 3 emerald shiners, and from then on I picked up a minnow, which I thought was crazy at first. I'm fishing in 2 feet of water, and from then on day 2 I wrecked them. I caught like 50 fish on a minnow. And, it's just stuff like that, little small key adjustments that I made the whole season, which really, made it the way that it went. But that was kind of a cool adjustment that I made, but still spinning rod, which is, against the norm at Okeechobee. So.
And then you get to go to Lake Ouachita, a place that's more suited for that style of fishing. Obviously, that tournament was in February, I believe, so still pre-spawn. The third day of that tournament was the coldest day I think I've ever spent in my entire life. It was miserable, but the 2 days prior were like incredibly warm, which was just a very bizarre thing. Pretty standard Arkansas weather, if I do say so myself. But we go into Lake Ouachita. I assume a place maybe you'd fished with, just being in hot springs in previous times with Bo during your time in college, but relatively a relatively new body of water, but it seemed to suit your style really well.
Yeah, it's definitely my style is a super clear lake and super deep. It's right in my wheelhouse, using electronics, finesse fishing, and that's exactly what I did. It did take a while for me to kind of learn the areas that had the above average fish, but eventually I did get dialed in and found a couple little key areas where they were hanging out, and I actually did learn a bunch that tournament. It was some of the most conditional fish I've ever seen in my life. I've said it on a couple other different podcasts, but literally it could be sunny and a cloud like the size of my boat could go over the sun, and the fish would just shoot to the surface and be super visible to me. So once I figured that out, I had a couple little key areas where they'd like to chase bait, and then I'd try to stay in range. If a cloud would get near the sun, I would fly as fast as I could to that little area, and sure enough, they'd be on the surface. And when that sun hit the water again, they'd shoot back down into the structure, and I couldn't pick them off anymore. So it was a really cool tournament to see that and just how conditional those fish were.
So that's so interesting, because when you say that, I think to myself, like, summertime fishing, a lot of times when you're fishing shallow, you're chasing shade. You're going to run the side of the bank that's got the most shade, the most laydowns, overhangs, docks, whatever it may be. You were basically fishing for the clouds. Like, you were fishing in areas that were covered by clouds. That is really an interesting thing there. So moving on, Santee Cooper. This is the one that I'm curious to talk to you about, because it's your worst finish of the year by far. I mean, going away by far. You go from 2 bodies of water, you have great finishes. At that point of the season, like, we'll get into the fishing aspect of it for sure, but at that point of the season, like, that had to have been a little bit of a gut punch to, like, have such good finishes back to back and then be like, that's not what I wanted at all. So, like, talk to me about that tournament specifically, and then, how it was crucial, I imagine, to bounce back mentally for the rest of the season.
Right, yeah, just like you said, it was a gut punch, to have a finish like that. It's not like a bad bomb, but it's definitely a little bit of a bomb compared to the first 2 finishes.
You set the bar pretty high. Let's be honest, you set the bar pretty high.
No, and that was, way above my expectations of the season, so, it was bound to happen. You can't have tournaments like that the whole season, but it was definitely a big learning experience for me, and I knew, I had to work even harder to make my, turn it back around the rest of the season.
So we're going to skip the Bassmaster Classic for now. Obviously, that was a great finish for you there, but one of the highest finishes ever from a college angler, which was such an impressive feat. But we'll skip for now to Logan Martin. Obviously, you went to school here at Montevallo. I imagine that's a place you fished a decent amount. It's not super close to Montevallo, probably like an hour and some change. Yep. Talk to me a little bit about that tournament. Transition time. A lot of the fish were already moved off, but it's just kind of a weird time of the year. You managed a 25th place finish. Good event there. Talk to me about how you approach that event.
Yeah, just like you said earlier, I had to rebound from Santee and get back in the game and the points. I attacked that one with a super open mind. I wanted to find some shallow fish and some offshore fish because, like you said, it would be a transition time. And that's exactly what I did. I found a couple of pockets that, had some really good grass fish, just catch them on a swim jig. And then I did find some offshore schools that were already out on the, the main river places. So that was kind of how I attacked that tournament. I did a little bit of everything that tournament. Shad spawn in the morning. That was kind of a crazy thing. I made an adjustment day 2. There was literally like 5 boats in front of me, before I took off, and I had this idea pop in my head to put a toad on, a white toad, and I tied that on, and literally I drive a mile down the river and catch a 4-pounder.
Wow.
Like, it's just crazy stuff. I just popped in my head like, oh, let's try that. It's just gut feelings, stuff like that all season that just, really turned my season around. And yeah, that really got me off on the right foot. And then, like I said, that was right by takeoff there at Lincoln Landing. And then I drove almost all the way to the dam right after that.
Oh, wow.
I fish a brush pile, catch another 4-pounder. So it's just, that's my fishing style. I just, just fly by the seat of my pants, and there's no telling when I pull the trolling motor where I'm going to stop. It's just drive till a good idea pops in my head. And that's how I fish this whole season.
That first place you stopped, the toadfish, was it even a place you had fished previously, or is it just a place you just pulled up because it looked good?
I fished it actually late in the afternoon. It was a super good hard grass line, and I thought maybe the shad might be spawning around that grass. And sure enough, I pull in there and they're dimpling everywhere. And it was my first cast, caught that 4-pounder.
Wow. So moving on, get back on track at Logan Martin. That's obviously a great step in the right direction. And then you take as good of a step as you possibly can in the next tournament at Eufaula. I'll just say this. I think when you look back through the season, obviously this year, the entire St. Croix Bassmaster Opens season, the final day of each tournament was on Bassmaster Live, which was a change for this year, something I'd say most fans were a huge fan of, and being able to watch that throughout the season. That tournament, the final day of that tournament, provided maybe one of the most electric moments of the entire Open season when you catch that giant, 8-pounder, 7?
8 3/4.
8 3/4. I'm sitting here trying to say it's a 7 something. It's a nearly 9-pounder on Lake Eufaula post-spawn. But just walk me through that tournament, because I think that really was the point. And I say this as somebody that obviously covers the college series. I've known who Easton Fothergill is for a while, just from covering you in the college series. But it seemed like at this moment, that's when people were like, this dude is for real. And that was such a big moment, it seemed like, for you and your season. So kind of give us a recap of that one.
Yeah, so Eufaula and the next one, St. Clair, were both the 2 I'd circled as ones I'm really worried about. Like I've said before, my style is deep, clear water, and Eufaula is the exact opposite of that. It's quite literally, it's a mud hole.
Yeah.
So, but with the 5 days of practice, I pretty much designated the first day of practice to pretty much drive around the whole lake and just get a feel for things. And I kind of stumbled upon 4 different creeks that actually had some pretty decently clear water. Clear is a relative term. Clear there is like a foot clarity. So, but yeah, and not long after that, I basically committed to those couple different areas, and I got comfortable fairly quickly. There too, a couple different patterns. I was on kind of a live scope deal and also a shallow deal. So, I never got enough bites in practice to make me feel good, but the size was definitely there. So, I went into that one, feeling hesitantly good, I guess I'll say. But yeah, ended up obviously turning out really well. I think I was in 3rd going into the final day. Actually had a really tough day 3. It was like 11 o'clock. I had just 1 fish in the box, and then I caught that giant, and that was definitely a game-changing fish. I went from, scrapping to, and that one, it just, like I said, it completely flipped my day around. And, from then on, I knew I just needed 3 more bites, and I'd have a really good shot at it. So.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. I'm glad you brought up that final day, because that's what was so wild, and no, all your buddies would have never let this down. It's like you had a almost 9-pounder in the box, and you had one other keeper at that time, and then like it was so hard to get a keeper bite. Yeah, it was so hard that it's like he's I obviously watching on Bass Track, I was like, Easton's in the lead right now with 2 fish because he's got almost 9-pounder. But it was like you sat there and watched, and you're like, dude, if he doesn't catch his limit, like somebody's gonna catch him with an almost 9-pounder in his box. So like, talk me through the emotions and like the mental stress of that final day, because you'd think with a 9-pounder in the box, you're thinking, oh, I'm set. You were far from over at that point. It was so hard.
Right. Yeah. I guess going through that day, it was 11 o'clock, like I said, with 1 keeper, and from then on, I'm like, okay, an adjustment needs to be made. What am I gonna do? And this light bulb went off in my head, like the spot set up exactly like I'm fishing, and I fished it in practice. Did not catch a fish there, but it just sets up right. And I went there and caught that giant, and that's when I was like, okay, like what else sets up like this? And I went to another place, and sure enough, catch another keeper. And then from then, I have 3 fish, and it's like 2 o'clock. I'm doing it like 3:30, I think, and I'm running the same pattern, just trying to brainstorm, areas that set up like it that I haven't fished yet, because it was glaringly obvious that I had kind of burned my stuff down. And it's right at the last minute, and I just decided to pull the plug on that whole deal and decided to go shallow with a chatterbait. And that's ultimately what won me the tournament. Was I caught my last 2 keepers shallow right at the last minute, and that's when I went in and ultimately won. But that was another key adjustment that I was able to make.
So I imagine at that point in the day, like this is kind of a roundabout question, but you fished the Bassmaster Classic the year previously, from winning the bracket. Well, this year, I guess you qualified, I should say, from the year previously to fish this Bassmaster Classic. But during that day, like, what point did you realize, like, you had it won? Like, was it not until you literally weighed your fish, or was there any point where you're like, I might have just punched my ticket to the Bassmaster Classic? Like, what was that? What was that like?
It's crazy to say, but even with that almost 9-pounder, the win never crossed my mind. I was so focused on getting as many points as possible that it really didn't cross my mind until I was bagging my fish at weigh-in. I was like, obviously my giant I put in my bag, and I was pulling the rest. I was like, dang, that's a pretty good one. That's a good one. Wow, I did pretty good today. So it really wasn't until I got, my boat hit the shoreline where I realized, like, wow, like I did really good today. I was just so focused on getting every possible point I could, because that, was the main goal.
So you win that tournament. Obviously, that qualifies you to fish the 2025 Bassmaster Classic. I know that was one of your biggest things. Obviously, qualifying for the Elite Series, I imagine, was your number one goal. But I do remember, specifically you talking about on the stage how you've always heard people talk about, once you make it to the Classic, all you want to do is get back. And, you took that to heart, and you made it back the very next year, which is really hard to do. Like Tristan McCormick did it, when he was the bracket representative. But like that rarely happens. So, maybe that drive home, what was that like? Kind of like the realization setting in that, like, you're going back to the Bassmaster Classic.
It was a crazy feeling for sure. But yeah, fishing my first one at Grand Lake was a life-changing experience for sure. Just how much goes on in the Classic is pretty wild. All the media and everything around you is definitely super life-changing. And like I said, I was driven to do whatever it takes to make it back. And luckily the cards came together there at Eufaula, and it was a surreal feeling for sure.
So we'll move on. Lake St. Clair is going to be the next Open. It's interesting to hear you say that was one that you circled that you were a little uneasy about. Because I just from, your fishing style and your strengths, I would have assumed that would be one that you had circled for the positive versus like, I don't know how this is going to go. Solid finish there, 46th. Really what you needed just to keep the train rolling. Why do you say that was one that you had circled? Like, why was that one that you weren't super sure about?
It's a weird place to have a tournament. Like, it's probably one of the most fun places in the whole country to go fun fishing, but I mean, it fits my style to a T. It's smallmouth, and it's using electronics. So people would think, like, man, this guy's going to do really good there maybe. But no, it's just the fact that a 3.5-pounder is nothing and a 4-pounder is everything.
Yeah.
And it's very mentally trying when you're there just catching fish like one after another, and they're just meaningless basically until you run into those 4-pounders. And yeah, that was another tournament. I had a decent day one. I was in like 60th or something, still in it for sure. You're pretty much never out of it on a place like that. I think I had like 19 pounds or something. But day two, I had 15 pounds at like noon, which is, I mean, you might as well throw your fish back with 15 pounds on St. Clair. And I'm just, it's another one of those moments where I sat down, got my driver's seat, I start the motor, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Because something has got to change. And my key area of that tournament was Anchor Bay, and there was just one little zone that I hadn't hit all of practice or the tournament. And I was like, well, we're going there. And, I just put the troller down, put it on 10, and just started hunting, and, just ran into some big ones. Luckily, it was just one of those things I was just meant to be, and I turned my tournament around and, ended up with a 46th place finish, which it's not a check, it's one place out, but, looking at the points, it's definitely what you needed.
So you go from that tournament and you move on to the tournament. I can't imagine that you had circled for anything other than like, this is my chance to win, which is really hard to do, even on your home lake. Leech Lake is the lake the tournament we're talking about, but it is so hard to do that. Like, I think that, you have so much build up to that. Like, I'm sure the schedule comes out, like that's the first moment you realize you're fishing Leech Lake, and then it's like months of time, I'm assuming, that you just think about that tournament, excuse me, and then you get to that tournament, and not only do you have a good finish, you win in front of your friends, your family. The sight of at weigh-in on that final day was just incredible, and obviously watching you on live was awesome as well. But just as much as you can, just give me a recap of that tournament and like how much that meant to you just as an individual and like your family to all be there with you.
Yeah, like you said, the Open schedule was actually announced right before the bracket, and when I won the bracket, that's all I could think about. Like, I get to fish the Open on my home lake, which is...
Forget the Elite Series, I'm winning this sucker.
But no, it was definitely a surreal feeling, and basically every day possible that I was home, I was on Leech Lake just graphing, and I basically graphed the whole lake. Just I wanted that one pretty dang bad. So, but fishing the actual event, I approached practice in a pretty cool way, I guess you could say. I completely stayed away from what I was planning on doing in the tournament.
Sneaky.
Yeah, I pretty much largemouth fished the whole week, and I kind of learned that people would get off the lake around 6 o'clock, and that's when I could kind of slide in and look at some stuff. But yeah, I really didn't know how to feel, honestly, because obviously I stayed away from everything. But it was first day of the tournament. Things were going exactly how I expected them to, and I was hoping they would happen. Could basically hit any place I wanted. People, there was some offshore stuff that I wanted to hit that I felt was sneaky that guys were kind of crawling on, but there was some other stuff that, no one was in sight. So instantly off to a really good feeling and had a really good day one. By far my biggest bag I've weighed in a tournament on that lake. So what a better tournament to have that happen.
Yeah, no kidding.
And yeah, day two was, I guess, coming in day one, obviously I updated Bass Track. People knew that I had a really good day. There's people just standing all over my docks, or not my docks, the docks at the tournament.
No, they're your docks now. They're yours now.
But no, everyone's just like cheering for me and stuff when I come in, and that was a pretty dang cool feeling to have all my friends and family there. But yeah, weigh in that big bag, and then guys were right behind me, even though I had a really good day. So knew I had to do it again. So day two was a little bit tougher. I ended up not feeling my limit till like 1 o'clock or something. It was kind of nerve-wracking, but yeah, we pulled it together, and that was definitely a week it was meant to be, surely, and just crazy is all I can say.
I want to go back to something you said because I'm so curious. When you're talking about how during practice you're largemouth fishing, and people see, at this point, again, going back to what I said a minute ago, at this point, it's no secret anymore to anybody in the field who Easton Fothergill is, and you probably don't care for me saying that, but it's the truth. At that point, you're making the most noise of anybody in the Opens. Do you think you lured people to fish the bank that saw you fishing the bank and fishing for largemouth during the tournament?
I had someone call me like, "What are you doing fishing largemouth? Are they biting up there?" I was just like, "This is working."
They're chomping. Yeah, they're chomping, dude. Get up here fast.
They were, but I knew that they wouldn't be able to compete. But I had to keep the points in mind. Going into the tournament, the largemouth rods did stay in the boat. I gotta, even though it's my home lake and I know exactly what I want to do, I did have to keep an open mind. Just keeping the points back of my mind, like I want to win this one, but you gotta be smart with it too.
So obviously, such a great tournament there. You get your second win. At this point, it's like people are starting to think maybe this guy's a freaking phenom. Like maybe he's not just good. Maybe this guy's one of the best we've ever seen. And then you go to the final two tournaments. I imagine, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm curious to know your thoughts here. You get to the final two tournaments of the Open season, and the pressure notches down even more. Like every single day that you spend on the Opens, and I just know this to be true from hearing people talk about it, is so important because like a one bad day can cost you your chance to fish in the Elite Series. But once you get to the end of the season, it seems like the pressure's just turned up that much more. So you head to the Mississippi River. Obviously a great finish there, 12th place. What was that tournament like? Because I imagine that's where it starts to become a realization that like I've put myself in a great position to qualify and do what I want to do. But again, the pressure at that point had to be like so much higher.
No, it was, yeah, the river, I've said my style a million times, it's not what the river is, but being at the Coosa River for the last 4 years,
Sure.
I was able to relate everything I saw there to the Coosa River, and actually I felt incredibly comfortable after a couple days of practice. I was catching them on a big swim bait and a glide bait, so it's a really cool bite. Absolutely no electronics involved. I'm just fishing current, and
Sure.
That deal I was on was kind of a big fish deal, so it kind of had me nervous, but it came together and it worked out, and that was probably out of all my finishes this year, at fishing wise, that was some of the most fun I've had. Just having about take the rod out of your hand and boat flipping everything was super fun.
No
I was really hoping I would make the last day just to be on camera doing that bite, but it didn't work out that way. But still, can't complain with a 12th place. And like you said, at that point, I was sitting, really good to make the elites, and but then, the AOI starts creeping into your head, like, you want to take advantage of this opportunity as best you can. So,
well, we go to the last tournament. There's a lot to unpack with the last tournament because it was originally going to be at Lake Hartwell. It gets moved to Lake Martin because of the damages with the hurricane. Obviously, it's a super unfortunate scenario. But you made the most of that, and you finished 17th. You end up winning, the EQ AOY Tackle Warehouse Angler of the Year, and I remember sitting there with your mom and Bo Browning's mom at weigh-in talking to him, and you could tell how much pressure she felt because she wanted you to win so bad, just like any parent would. And as that's going on, it just made me think, like, it's always something. Like, you're always on to something. Like, at that point, you've already got the Elite Series locked up. But Cody Meyer doesn't make it easy on you, and he's pressuring to take over the Angler of the Year. Like, walk me through the emotions of that tournament, because you had to feel great going into it knowing, I'm going to make the Elite Series. Like, let's just be honest. Like, you pretty well knew at that point that was going to be the case. But you're also going head-to-head with a storied professional, a guy that I know you look up to try to win Angler of the Year. So just walk me through the emotions and that tournament in general.
Yeah, I guess having that opportunity at AOI was something I did not want to slip by me. So that was actually, going out those first 2 mornings was some of the most nerves I felt over the whole season. In the back of my mind, the ultimate goal was complete, but I wanted that bad because at the time I was thinking I was going to have to pay $45,000 entry fees. So that's, a huge chunk of change. I wanted to get that covered. So yeah, going out into that event, I actually got on a really cool bite, catching shallow cruisers on the bank. There's a lot of live scope fish out there, but I caught a bunch of them in practice, and they're all like 130 to 150s, but literally schools of like 100 of them. Did find a couple areas of those just to have in my back pocket, but ultimately I kind of committed to the bank pretty early in that tournament, and that's just where the better average size was for me. And yeah, 17th place, caught them all on a jig and a wacky worm, so super fun bite. And yeah, I think that event I needed to be like top 25 or something for AOI, so it was super cool event, but it was also very nerve-wracking knowing how good Cody Meyer is, and that's exactly, it sets up like his California lakes that he grew up on. So I knew he was going to, smash them there, but yeah, barely able to hold him off. But it was, it's super cool how just, going back to, how I grew up and everything, having that college tournament, absolutely changed my life. It, financially, I wasn't ready to do the Opens. I didn't grow up with money, so it was super cool just going out every morning to, just be thankful that I'm even there, and then have it the whole the season unfold like it did was, a dream come true, really.
So then I want to walk through the I guess second day of the tournament. That had been the day you found out your final finish. At that point you're announced an Elite Series angler. Everything that you wanted, came to fruition at that day, and you got to enjoy that with your family. Your girlfriend surprised you and showed up. Just what were the emotions like of that whole experience, having everybody you love and cherish, being there for you, in that moment?
It was incredibly surreal moment having her there with me, and then also, it wasn't long after that I'd realized that my travel partner Bo had made it, and when we hugged there, that was a pretty crazy moment. That it's a long season, a long road to get there, and we both made it, and that was definitely a moment I'll never forget. Us hugging there at the weigh-in, just we did it, we made it, and both of our dreams came true. And then that night we went out and got pizza, both of our families there, all of our friends, and just a moment I'll never forget. And it was just all that support just means the world to both me and him.
So you qualify for the Elite Series. We're now, I guess, close to a month removed, I guess, from that, closing in on a month anyways. Haven't even made it that far. But, you're preparing to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series in 2025. Has it set in yet, number one? And number two, what has it been like, having all the success you had during the season, the name recognition now, everything that's happened for you. I know you don't like bragging on yourself, but it really couldn't have gone much better than it did. I mean, let's be honest, it couldn't have gone a whole lot better. And then now, having all that momentum rolling into your first year on the Elites, talk to me a little bit about that.
Momentum's a huge thing in fishing. We all know that, and it's glaringly obvious in my season. It just goes hand in hand with your confidence, and it's, as I know, it can come to an end just as fast as it started. So all I can do is just work my hardest and just do my thing. But just having the Elite Series title next to my name is a dream come true, and it definitely, I don't think it'll set in until Dave Mercer mentions my name when we're idling out at the St. John's River. I think that's when it'll really hit me, but yeah, just like this year, I'll have to block all that out and just realize, still got to do our job. But yeah, definitely a dream come true to be on the Elite Series next year. I can't believe it.
And it is so tough. Like when you say that, the only thing that that goes through my head is like being a professional angler, like you can never let up. Like, I mean, like that's and you hear guys talk about that. You hear the greatest of all time talk about that very thing. Like it never stops. Like you have the best season of your career, and you being so young as it is, it's almost a little funny to say like the best year of your career. It was the first year of your career, really, in a lot of ways, as far as fishing, a professional circuit like this, and now to have to flip the switch that quickly. And it's on to the next thing, which is I imagine has to just be a whirlwind of emotions and really no time to let up. But Easton, I appreciate you so much for stopping by today. This is the very first new studio podcast here on the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. I appreciate you a ton for stopping by, hanging out, goofing around a little bit, and folks, we will see you on the next episode.